Hi, here's Chapter 9 of Lucky Lure at Arrow Point, coming to you from my still snowy backyard. Jamie ate until his stomach felt as tight as a drum. He was just polishing off the very last of the chocolate cake when the thud-thud of the Minto's paddle wheel sounded. From the other direction came the swift put-a-put of an outboard motor, and the two boats, big and little, came up to the wharf. The fishermen got out of their boat and took out their rods and their lines. The Minto put down her gangplank, and one of the crew carried 2 cartons of groceries for Mrs. Turner and set them on the wharf. Captain Jones leaned out of the wheelhouse and threw a bundle onto the beach. New storybooks. He hadn't forgotten. Jamie's face glowed. He almost forgot to say thank you. "Where's your fish?" a passenger called out to the fishermen. They pointed to the lake. Jamie caught hold of the strings, which held his fish in the water to keep it fresh. He held it up so that Captain Jones could see it. And he did. He waved his hand at Jamie as the big wheels churned and the boat backed out, and Jamie was so proud that he quite forgot about limping. "Time we went home, boy," his grandmother reminded him, as the Minto grew smaller and smaller in the distance. "You take one box and I'll take the other. You can leave your fishing rod in the shed." Suddenly Jamie felt tired. The sun had burned his nose. He dragged his feet, and he didn't want to walk at all. He wanted to be carried. "Oh, Grandma, I can't," he pouted. "I've got to carry my fish, and it's heavy." Mrs. Turner's eyes snapped. "I'm tired too," she reminded him. "That fish doesn't weigh more than half a pound. Now, if you want to eat tomorrow, you lift that box." Jamie was shocked. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. He didn't know what to do about it, so he did 2 things. He began to cry, but he picked up the box and his bundle of storybooks and started to carry them, and they weren't nearly as heavy as he thought they were. Nor was his fish. He stopped crying and began to sniff. He limped when he remembered it, but he kept moving until the fisherman caught up with him and took both boxes. And before he climbed into the bed with the clean white sheets and the red and white coverlet, he whispered, "I'm sorry." The next day, Jamie just hung around the house. He didn't feel so good. "I don't think I'll go outside today," he mumbled, laying his books aside. "Can I look in that chest?" Mrs. Turner was about to give in when there was a shout from the front porch, and the fishermen came up from the front path, and the fishermen came up on the porch, carrying a beautiful rainbow trout for their supper. It was so fresh that the green and white stripes were still on its sides, and Jamie was so busy admiring it that he quite forgot to ask about the chest again. And the fishermen had wonderful luck and took word of it back to town, and for the next 3 weeks the little house was never empty. "And guess who is coming tomorrow?" Mrs. Turner asked, opening a letter. "My mother and father?" It was almost the first time the boy had asked her them. And though they sent him letters and presents, and his grandmother told him over and over of his father as a little boy, Jamie found it hard to believe in them except as people far away. "No, dear, I think it will be the end of summer before they can get away. But do you remember Conductor Craig?" Jamie nodded. "Well, he's the one that's coming. He'll bring his own boat on the deck of the Minto, he says." Jamie pushed back his chair. "Oh, gee," he shouted, "I'm glad he's coming. I bet he'll take me out fishing with him when he comes. I just bet he will." His blue eyes danced with pleasure, and he picked up Minty and hugged him until he yelped. For Jamie dearly wanted to go fishing now from a boat, and none of the other fishermen had asked him. He'd had his orders very strict from his grandmother not to ask, and he hadn't. But it had been hard. "Now we'd better go and clean the cottage. I'll carry the fresh linen, and you can bring the soap and the scrubbing brush. And laddie, don't be counting too much on that fishing trip." But Jamie did. As he walked along beside his grandmother, limping ever so slightly, he was already planning how he could ask without making it too plain. And he was wondering if Minty could go along too, and if he'd catch a rainbow or just a squawfish like he caught off the dock. And he dreamed so hard that he almost went right past the little house without seeing it. That's the end of Chapter 9.